Hello, everyone. I'm John Munitz, the co-host and president of the People's Basics. We're here with another daily recap for you all so that we get ready for more and more episodes to come and the full launch of the People's Basics. Today, we're going to get to start a little series we're going to be doing over the next couple of days. We are going to be covering the New York City mayoral race. We want to start off with a little fun before we go to the serious contenders in the next few days. On our program today, what I want to cover is some of the lesser names in the mayoral race. For those of you that are unaware, we have a mayoral race in New York City in 2021. Bill de Blasio is no longer able to run as he has served his 2 terms. And the primary, which is pretty much all that's really going to matter in this race, given that New York City is predominantly a Democratic city, is going to be the Democratic primary. And that is occurring in June. And so over the next 3 days, I'm going to be covering all the candidates. But first and foremost, I want to start off with a little bit of fun with you all, give you the full list of candidates, and then we're going to go into some of the lesser candidates before tomorrow we cover Andrew Yang's full platform. And then the day after that, we will cover all of the other competitors in the race because it really is a Yang versus the field race. So no further ado, I'm going to share my screen with you all, and we're going to go through some of the lesser candidates in the mayoral race. Okay, so first, we're here on our page. Have your qualms with Wikipedia as you may. It does actually a pretty good job of actually capturing all of the candidates that are in the field, even better than the mainstream media at times that we know for sure has excluded candidates at times. So we're going to go through who the general list of candidates are, and then we're going to dive into some of the minor candidates in the field. So the candidates in the race are alphabetically Eric Adams, who is the Brooklyn Borough President. We have Sean Donovan, who is a former U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. We have Catherine Garcia, who is the former commissioner of the New York City Department of Sanitation. We have Raymond McGuire, former city group executive. We have Carlos Menchaca, who is a New York City council member for Brooklyn's District 38. We have Diane Morales, who is a former social services nonprofit CEO. We have Scott Stringer, who is a New York City comptroller. Laurie Sutton, who is the former commissioner of the New York City Department of Veteran Services. We have Maya Wiley, who is a new school professor, as well as former counsel to Bill de Blasio. And then we have Andrew Yang, who is a former presidential candidate, as many of you here on the channel know, an entrepreneur and a nonprofit executive. So other than that, we also have these other declared candidates, which is the focus of today's video. So let me quickly read through the list before we dive into each of these candidates' pages and what information we have been able to dig up so far. So first is we have Art Chang. He is a former JP Morgan Chase managing director, the founder of New York City Votes. There's Eddie Cullen, who's a technology entrepreneur and a professor at Purdue University. Maybe a little strange that Purdue University professors coming to New York City, but we'll go into that. Avatar Davie, who is a tech entrepreneur and artist. Cleopatra Fitzgerald, interesting character you'll see when we go to her website. It's a little vague. Aaron Fuldenauer, who's an attorney, a candidate for New York City Council's Manhattan District 1. Quan DeFrancis, the president of Sykes Capital Management. Gary Guire, a paramedic and nurse. Max Kaplan, a director of social media talent resources. Barbara Kavoit, CEO of Evergreen Construction and a former Real Housewives of New York City cast member. We have Paperboi Love Prince, a Brooklyn rapper and candidate for New York's 7th Congressional District in 2020. Stacy Pressman, who's a stand-up comedian. Stephen Bishop Seeley, an actor. Asad Sayed, who is a former New York City mayoral candidate. Jocelyn Taylor, CEO of TaylorMade Contracting. And Isaac Wright Jr., who is a lawyer. The only other names that I think are actually worth noting that they actually capture here in the potential are Al Franken, who has rumored at the potential that he might join the race. I doubt he will, but it's not something to completely rule out. And if he did, he would actually be a serious contender in the field. And then the other one is Christine Quinn, who is the former person who had run against de Blasio in the Democratic primary before de Blasio became mayor for the first time. So I think those people can have an impact on the field. But with no further ado, I want to go to each of those candidates' pages. So the first one is Art Chang. So we're going to explore the issues pages of them as well as the bio to hear a little bit more about them. So first, we're going to start off on the bio. So he's born in Atlanta to Korean immigrants in an all-white district in Ohio. The state of the art. He faced racism outside the home and domestic violence. He left the home at age 14 and became Yale University's second male women's studies graduate. 35 years ago, he moved to New York City, and so he's been there ever since. He wants this to be an equitable city, and he's worried about where we're going. And he has 30-year track record of bringing diverse people together to realize transparent changes in both government and nonprofits, including NYC law departments, New York State Empire State Development, Indiana Department of Child Services, the CUNY system, and the New York City Campaign Finance Board. So he is someone who's emphasizing that we do need to embrace technology and that the city of New York is known as one of the financial capitals of the world, and we need to be embracing that. So let's dive into his issues. What is Art Chang really championing in his campaign? So the issues. First, he wants to create, innovate, produce, cause, invest, and forge a better future. Pretty generic filler. Let's see. With the right leadership, they can recover from COVID and emerge into a more fair and compassionate city. They need to fix housing affordability, safety, policing, small business support, education, and healthcare. I'd say that's good priorities in terms of what the voters are caring about. We'll dive into the actual solution soon. The systems we need are interconnected. I agree. One thing is going to touch many systems, and you're going to have to address them all. So let's go into the first one. So his top priorities are universal child care, stopping evictions and foreclosures, and investing in truly affordable housing, supporting small businesses, reimagining police and public safety, preparing for climate change and preventing future damage, building a government that works, protect, uplift, and support the arts, and education that meets each student where they are. Seems, again, pretty good priorities. Let's look a little bit deeper onto some of the details that he has here. So let's dive into the universal child care. So his plan. He wants to make each location a center for community care, something that'll have 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. childcare, including summers, childcare centers in every community rolled out gradually, coordination with the Department of Health for infant and maternal health, partnerships to provide free or low-cost baby and women's hygiene product, educational resources, and easy-to-use technology. Great. Love that. Let's go to the next one. Build on the foundation of universal pre-K. For those of you who are unaware, because you might not be from the New York City area, that was actually something that Bill de Blasio had championed, and we have a program for. So we are trying to build on top of that now. So universal pre-K. So they're going to be trying to leverage the community-based organization model, expanding home-based and institutional providers, and working to safely reopen existing childcare centers. Okay, yeah, so this is more like kind of a localized model and working with what the area currently has, streamlining licensing to make sure facilities can properly operate and have enhanced training. Okay, again, a little vague, but it's a good idea depending on what that specifically means. Shift government oversight from reactive and punitive to proactive and collaborative. Use technology to make the system user-friendly, easy to navigate, and fair. Include all stakeholders in planning and administration, and treat parents as partners. And as well, prioritize childcare deserts first. Again, all good solutions here. So far, Art Chang has had a pretty good handle of the issues. I love to see that he has some of the statistics within his page and the priorities. I would say I'd like to have a little bit more detail, but I think he's doing a good job so far. So I look forward to continuing to see what he has. Let's go back and see if there's any other ones we want to dive into. I'm going to be spending a little bit more time on some of the candidates who actually have more detail here than some of the other candidates that we're going to quickly go by, as you'll see going along. I think the other thing that I'm looking to see is him building out some of these other ones here, like the building a government that works. I want to see what his tech solutions and his democracy reform solutions are. And yeah, let's go to our next candidate. I think we've gotten a good hold of Art Chang. I think he's a worthwhile candidate to consider. I obviously, and I will make full disclosure ahead of time, I've previously endorsed Andrew Yang, and I think Art Chang is kind of similar. So I encourage people, if you're considering Andrew Yang, it's a ranked choice voting primary. Consider Art Chang for your list. He has his priorities straight. Let's go to our next one. So we got Eddie Cullen. So let's go first to Eddie's bio. So, Eddie first he was born in the Bronx. Okay. So then he moves on to Manhattan. Okay. Then his grandfather he's talking about was one of 19 who was also in New York City. So he's a multiple generation family. His family fought in World War II. Okay. Then he attended high school in Manhattan where he was on the football team and an All-American hurdler. Again, biopic stuff. Like, I will admit, I get why some people like to hear the story and they want to really get invested. It's nice, but it's just, that doesn't do it for me personally. I want to hear like the career stuff first. Like, what have you done in your career? It's nice if your family has done stuff, but we're voting for you. We're not voting for your family. We're not voting for you were a high school like football player or anything. We want to know what you've done to help your community as an adult, or even as a kid if you've done something earlier. Again, yeah, rugby. So okay, so now we're getting into some of the more maybe serious stuff here. So he joins the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Phoenix, Arizona, lived on $85 a month, and he volunteers at Brophy Preparatory High School in Phoenix, Arizona, teaching high school classes. Okay. So he had left to do some volunteer work. Okay. Then he leads service trips. Cool. So he's doing some volunteer humanitarian work. He played competitive rugby. Okay. In Australia. He then founds a company to help bridge the gap between secondary and post-secondary students. Engagement and sustainable job creation with a portfolio management video game to train students. Okay. So this is kind of like a financial education course, I think, that he might have started. It would be nice if he had provided more reference, but that's something that I actually do think is needed. There are kind of like some transitionary skills before you go potentially live off on your own when you're in college, or, supplemental education to the high school experience, or before you want to take on an expensive degree. There might be some avenues for some gap year kind of preparatory venture. So that could be interesting. So then he starts an incubator, the Fordham Foundry, and becomes the director of innovation at Fordham. It's pretty cool, leading hackathons. And he's hired as the first employee at company.co and helps lay the groundwork for the largest technology ecosystem. Okay, that's kind of cool. So we have another tech-focused candidate in the race now. Eddie founded Bronx Tech to work with schools and corporations on building innovative education strategies. Projects included building a VR empathy software, an accelerator for event technology with the leading company who produces New York Fashion Week. Again, cool. So a lot of his focus has been on tech and startups. That's what I'm really reading here. And he had done previous humanitarian work. Okay. His father passing. Impact USA Group, more humanitarian work. Okay, he met with the Pope's ambassador. That's kind of a cool thing. He was a deputy campaign manager for Karen Beltran. So she was the mayor of Yonkers. Now he's a scholar in the mechanical engineering at Purdue. So, okay, so he's an educator. He works in tech. He's worked in previous startups. He's done some humanitarian work. That's pretty cool. So let's see the 110-day plan that Eddie has built out here. Okay, so New York public-private partnerships. Ooh. Let's see. Does he have it all fleshed out? No. I mean, he gives us like little describers. Well, let me see what the join us. I'm assuming it's going to yeah, that's exactly what I thought it would do. Yeah, so Eddie, I'd love some more fleshed out policy. Let's look at least some of the blurbs of what you had. Let's see if you have at least the right priorities, because I'm not seeing the detail right now. Okay, so he wants to make public-private partnerships is key, which is I don't disagree with public-private partnerships as a general concept, but I don't think that's our like everything. Like, there are some things the public can drive on its own and does not need the private cooperation on. But let's see. So artificial intelligence, That's kind of cool. Again, these are going to be vague, so I have no idea what he wants to specifically do with it. Aviation, sure, there are some decaying airports that we got to deal with, like JFK particularly. Aging, yeah. Not a lot of people end up retiring on our area. It's kind of pricey. Civil and human rights, that can mean so many different things. Obviously, there has been a rise in hate crimes, and so that could definitely touch into that. Civil service and labor, agreed, could mean so many different things, but yeah, we need to address that. Consumer affairs and business licensing, agreed. Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like all these things, it's like, oh, yes, these are things that are like subjects we need to address in some way. But it's like, I'm being told like nothing of what you want to do, which is like, it's great that you have all of these senses of what needs to happen. That's great. And it's clearly comprehensive in that regard. But I'm a sucker for details. So I'll say this. Eddie could have potential, smart guy. But he is not doing as nearly a good enough job at the communication front to really communicate where he really wants to go on these issues. So, Eddie, we'll touch base if you ever end up updating details. Let's go to our next one. So, we got Avatar Davie. So, a little bit of a different structured website here. So, he has his action list, a thesis video. We're not going to watch the whole thesis video. And I will tell you this, Davie, it's not going to do you a lot of good having a 12-minute video for people to go watch. Like, they're not going to end up clicking that. That's too long for a first intro. It's only going to be for the people who you already got on your team. But let's go through and see if we can figure it out. Because it's very different than most people would have. So let's go to your manifesto. Yeah, you're just trying to sell a book, aren't you? Like, some people use mayoral races just to get their names on the ballot and just sell books and get their name out there. And it's, you know what? Yeah, that's why we have fees for when you try to apply to run for races. And we all hate it because it makes it like a higher barrier to entry for poor people who actually want to run for office. But some people do this and they sign up to run for office just so that they can have their name on a ballot, and it's a form of advertising. Maybe there's more here, but again, literally, you're sending me to a book, and you got music on the page. This ain't a mayoral campaign. It's a publicity campaign. Next one. Okay, Cleopatra Fitzgerald. What a name. I mean, the first thing to start off with, you come into the page, and the first thing you're hit with is all lives matter. And it's an interesting dynamic to have this be the person who's running again in the Democratic Party. Some people who generally are a bit more conservative will hop into the Democratic primary because they know the labels matter with people, and they have a better chance potentially through the Democratic primary than as a Republican. But it's looking like she's got kind of a broken down website a little bit. Like, one of the things that I wanted to do this is going to be a little bit more humorous in the sense that, like, you get to see that some people, they are not on this necessarily to just, I don't want to say, be the most serious. Like, some people, it is an exercise of just trying to build up, publicity for themselves. Let's see. Maybe I'm being unfair here because of some busted pages when I tried to get the About Us. Let's go with single campaign, because I want to see this out. Single payment. I don't know what that means. Buddies, civic, and make your voices heard. I guess this is supposed to be an events page, and she hasn't had any events yet. Let's keep exploring. I enjoy this too. Like, I know it can be a little mean, and we don't want it to be that, but it's like, it is interesting to see all the characters that come into the race, because when you have these open like primaries, when you don't have an incumbent, you get so many characters who want to come in, and it's really an interesting thing. Like, I remember so many people got to learn so many of the characters in the presidential race, and there were so many more that weren't even listed. They just didn't make the debate. So I kind of enjoyed the same thing. Okay, so let's see. So she's got some stuff here on her all campaigns thing. Not a lot. But like, okay, so her top things are civil liberties and human freedom, peace, and immigrants. Okay. So not as much of an economic focused individual and more on a civil rights type stuff. Yeah. So let's see. Let's do one read. Read on civil liberties. Oh, it's just a Wikipedia page. Okay. Yeah. Great. Great thought contribution. Yeah, so that's enough for Cleopatra Fitzgerald. Quite the character, clearly. Let's go to our next one. Aaron Fuldenauer, a mayor of New York City. So here we get to meet Aaron. He's a veteran of New York City politics. I will say this, Aaron, get yourself a different font color. It's hard to read your page already. A veteran of New York City politics, Aaron is recognized for his work addressing difficult policy issues and combating government corruption. After personally witnessing police officials seize political literature from members of the public in violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, Aaron filed several legal complaints against the city of New York. Shortly thereafter, in response to complaints that Aaron filed, the city agreed to never again repeat that unlawful action. That's pretty cool. The Gotham Gazette recently recognized Aaron for his environmental advocate work. Aaron's passionate about promoting a sustainable environment and healthy eating. He worked on an organic garden with his family. He would fill milk jugs with water and tend to gardens, yada, yada. Son of school teachers, valedictorian of a liberal arts school, public service. Let's see. He had an interest in politics and journalism, served as the news editor of the college newspaper. Again, this is the thing I'll say with a lot of people. I don't need the whole life story, and I might be different than a lot of people. I want to hear, like, what have you done, like, as an adult? And you've done some of that. So some of that other stuff, it's just like, yeah, not as big. I mean, to be fair, it does impact that you ended up getting onto the Ninth Circuit as a law clerk. That's pretty impressive. Fulfilling a lifelong dream. Aaron relocated to New York City to accept employment at a top law firm. Worked on leading business disputes and intellectual property lawsuits before government regulators. Aaron has been a champion for minority and female lawyers attempting to succeed. Okay. Furthermore, Aaron has been dedicated in providing free legal work to those who cannot afford it. For example, he successfully represented a youth mentoring organization in Washington Heights that was being harassed by another building occupant. Okay. So we got ourselves a little bit of a lawyer here standing up on civil rights issues and for the environment. Let's see if the issues page matches as such. So what is his top issue? So COVID-19 and revitalizing our economy, protecting small business owners, healthy eating, environment, infrastructure, support small business, police reform, education, affordable housing, land use and preservation, and protecting the vulnerable. Good priorities. Let's hop into a couple of them that I'm actually kind of curious about. So I want to see what he wants to do on healthy eating specifically first. So healthy eating. He wants to ban unhealthy eateries at government-controlled buildings. Okay, let's see. Promote healthy eating. Aaron believes New York should create a policy in which only healthy eateries and local growers can lease government-owned retail space. That means that unhealthy eateries would be banned in food courts, in airports, train stations, subway stations, government offices, and parks. Aaron supports banning unhealthy eateries in government buildings to make room for an abundance of affordable, fresh food choices and to incentivize consumption of healthy, humane, and locally grown foods. I can dig that. It's their property, and yeah, they can use it for healthy purposes. I think that's a totally reasonable idea. Healthy dining dollars. Dining plans have long been a staple of college and university student services, allowing access to nutritious food at a reduced price. Dining dollars at colleges and universities typically promote discounts at participating local restaurants. Establishing a similar citywide healthy dining dollars program would involve health-conscious small restaurants who enroll with the city government to provide residents with various discounts when purchasing food, and any individual living below the poverty line would be automatically given a $150 voucher each month to spend at these registered healthy eateries. Those above the poverty line could also buy into the program to receive significant discounts from these restaurants. Not only would these businesses see an increase in profits. So, I mean, this is kind of a little bit at odds with the general concept of UBI and not restricting dollars. But I don't hate this one, frankly. I think there is reason to want to incentivize certain health options. And this is kind of like a way to make it a more incentivized system for businesses too. So I don't mind this, actually. I think that you're probably going to see good savings from, just the healthcare savings from people eating healthier lifestyles. So I'd want to maybe see a little bit more data on this, and I would want to, ask specifically Aaron about why this compared to something like a basic income. But I think it has some merit. Let's see, promoting healthy eating in schools. Our schools should be showing students from an early age what they should be eating. So healthy lunch meals, breakfasts, and education. Okay, that's fine. And then address food insecurity. Yeah, I mean, this is a big issue in New York City. Unfortunately, more than 1.2 million New York City residents, or 15% of the citizens, are food insecure. The New Yorkers go without access to adequate food to support an active, healthy lifestyle. And they end up having to get processed foods instead. So this is basically trying to help expand food and nutrition access programs to those areas. Pretty good agenda so far in healthy eating. Let's look at another one here. Let's look at land use and preservation. Sometimes this can cross into the boundaries of like NIMBYism, and I want to see where he's trying to strike a balance here. Land use and preservation. A greener New York City. Necessary counterpoints to our concrete jungle are green spaces where members of the community and their families can decompress, enjoy nature. According to every New Yorker, should live within a 10-minute walk of a safe, well-maintained park in order to achieve this goal. Aaron will make sure our parks are pretty. I agree. Parks are very nice to have, especially in New York City. Preserve historic districts. New York City contains a number of historic neighborhoods, including Soho, Chinatown, Harlem, Inwood, City Hall. There's a lot of them. We need to strengthen land use regulations to preserve small businesses and to protect the integrity of historic building sites and neighborhoods. We must preserve the character of our neighborhoods and make sure they remain affordable for all local residents. A tiny bit of cop out. That makes me want to read more about what his housing policy is, because this is usually some classic rhetoric that is used by like NIMBYs. Let's see. Parking in commercial hubs. Short-term street parking is supposed to be readily available in commercial hubs, such as I will fight to improve access to such parking spots. The quick turnover street parking ensures that customers of local businesses are able to stop, shop, place. Yeah, huge problem. You cannot park in Manhattan, right? Or frankly, in so many areas of New York City in general, as they listed here. So yeah, I mean, again, this is only a problem for those that have cars, and we should be encouraging more public transportation in general, and less necessity of just roads. And you want to make sure that there are particular lanes to make sure that you can have accessibility for buses and bikes. But yeah, it would be good if we had a little bit better turnover of our parking and that it was better maintained, because it will increase foot traffic at our local businesses, and it just makes life a lot easier. Revitalize Manhattan's historic Chinatown. Sure. Okay. It's a target area he wants to revitalize. It definitely could use some repair. The last one, I said I only wanted to read this because he was a bit of a NIMBY in his rhetoric before, so I want to see what his affordable housing policy is. Preserve our neighborhoods as income inequality increase. Grew up displacement. Preserve our neighborhoods that new affordable housing units are built. Reform public housing. Okay, this is an important one. New York City, NYCH public housing facilities are in dire need of improvement. Past several years, cause of dangerous and even deadly living conditions. Okay, so this is just rebuild them. Okay, provide incentives for the construction of more rental units. So few New Yorkers can afford the luxury condos that have recently dotted the landscape of New York. I'll fight to realign the incentives of real estate industry for rental housing, which is what more rental units will mean more choices and ultimately lower prices. Okay. I need a lot more rhetoric on this, because to me, I'm getting like, you're trying to have it a little bit both ways, and you're like hitting all the nice buzzwords, but like push comes to shove, you're gonna have to make some trade-offs of like where you put in the housing, where's the expansion coming, how are you doing the incentivization? Like there's some questions that need to be answered. But Aaron Fuldenauer, I will say in general, when I've read through his policies and his bio, he seems pretty solid. And I'll say for anyone who is considering Andrew Yang as their first choice, another person to consider. So I'm going to go on from him. You'll notice that some of the ones we're going to hit soon, we're going to breeze through. Boom. First example, Quanda Francis. We didn't find any information because it's coming soon. And I'll say this, no mean spirit. If you haven't had your website out yet, as you've seen from how many candidates I'm covering here, and we're not even covering the big name candidates in the race that are getting polled consistently and polled consistently higher, try a different local office. That's all I'm going to say. I'm never going to say bully someone out and like say, you got to leave. But it's like, you're a little behind. So wishing you well. Wish we had more details. Okay, next one. Gary Guerrero. I don't know if I said that right. Probably definitely wrong. So he was, again, they always go with the born because for some reason people are loyalists. It's like, oh, you were born here. You were loyal to us. I don't get that. But yeah, he's born here, got his bachelor's degree in the area, lifelong native. He began his career as a nurse, worked as an emergency nurse for 9 years, in the ICU for 6 years. Thank you for that, Gary. Tremendous work, hard work. With his experience as a paramedic, he went and going into emergency nursing was a great fit. He worked at the cardiothoracic ICU nurse and medical intensive. Oh boy, he's got heart problems too in the intensive unit. That must be stressful. Okay, so this guy's handled a lot of stress. In early 2020, a pandemic was on the horizon. Unbeknownst to himself, he found himself caring for patient 0, the first patient who had the infamous, wow. That's a cool, well, it's a tragic story, but it's like, wow, he is the dude that had the first COVID patient. Obviously, I can't verify that now, but it's an impressive claim. Let's go to your issues, Gary. So what does Gary care about most? So he has 7 issues here. Racial justice, pandemic, police, education, jobs and economy, mental health, and healthcare. Healthcare is coming out soon, though. So good priorities overall, I will say. It's kind of, when I was focusing on what issues I think are important in this race and the polling bears out, it comes down to recovering from COVID, the economy, and that touches housing, that touches small businesses, it touches many things. It's the economy. And then it's safety. And it's safety from police and safety from people who would commit crimes with police protection. So I think he's hit that right on the nose. He's got the healthcare front and center, the economy front and center, and both the police and racial justice stuff. So, I think the thing I want to check out is 3 things. So I want to check out, actually 2 things. I want to check out what he wants to do on police, and I want to check out what he does on jobs in the economy. Let's go jobs in the economy first, because that's what I care about most. So I click the button of find out more, and there is no more. Okay, that's disappointing. I was really hoping there. You click on police. You don't get anything for police. Do any of them have one? Okay, so yep. No, that page doesn't exist either. Okay. How about... No. Well, that's disappointing. Gary, they're the right things to focus on, but there's no details here. So, yeah, wish you well. Thank you for being a nurse in the intensive care unit, though. That's mighty important work. So thank you for your service in that regard. Okay, let's go to our next candidate. So Max Kaplan. You're seeing a Google page here because we couldn't find anything on this dude. So, again, you're on the ballot, just trying to get your name out. But you haven't done the work to actually be a serious candidate. Next one. This is a more interesting one. So I couldn't find a page on Barbara Kavoit, but I found this interview in the New York Times. And I wanted to cover this one because it's kind of interesting, because it's kind of funny. I mean, like a housewife running for, not just a housewife, like the Real Housewives cast member running for mayor. They did this nice interview in the New York Times, asking her about herself and why she was running. So it was kind of interesting. So I'm going to go through and read just the interview of this. So the parts in bold are the questions from the New York Times interviewer, Katie Weaver. Okay, so it starts. How long have you lived in New York? And she responds, I was born and raised in the Bronx, and then I have lived in New York City since college, close to 30 years. Where'd you go to school? Suny Oswego. Let's see, where are you in your life in New York City now? My life revolves around my son, making sure that he's safe, making sure my employees are safe, making sure that they get to work safe, making sure our job sites are safe, and basically being home life. I think she cares about safety. If people know you outside of the construction scene, it's likely that they recognize you from the 11th season, and you're like, yeah, and I also wrote a novel, but they'll scream that at me. Can you explain why you're a friend of as opposed to a full housewife on your... I don't care. Do you think any of your conflicts with cast members on the show stemmed from political differences? No, I mean, I don't think anybody on the show probably has the same values as I do as far as policies go. I don't know if anybody from the show are Democrats that I was involved with on the season. I don't think so. We never discussed politics. That kind of surprises me. Like, if you're going to run for office, I think you'd maybe want to talk politics with people. I don't know. Her call. You're comfortable saying you're definitely more liberal? I'm definitely more liberal. I'm more for the people. I'm really about making sure that the city, the underserved, get served. We need a comprehensive plan to deal with social problems, homeless families, emotionally disturbed people, people who are on our streets. Really, what I want to see is not the New York I want to see. I'm not in my fancy townhouse. If I'm mayor, this is not the New York that will exist. I can tell you that. Are you in an apartment building? I'm in a non-fancy apartment building. Oh, okay. What percentage of 2020 did you spend in the city versus outside the city? I would say 70-30. For the 30%, where were you? In the Hamptons. Okay. Oh, they bring up Andrew Yang here. That's interesting. So Andrew Yang, who's running, received backlash after he mentioned that he spent quite a bit of the pandemic outside the city. What is your response to people who criticize mayoral candidates who did not remain in the city for all of 2020? It's not that I did this as a new thing. I've had a house in the Hamptons for the past 20 years, and I've always spent 30% of my time there. I don't know what the reason was for Andrew Yang not being here, but if it has to do, maybe it's children but I did not see something. I think he had mentioned his children. I don't have anything to say about him not being in the city, but what I can say is it's nice of him to come back to run for mayor after trying to become president unsuccessfully. I mean, did he just come back to the city? I mean, I've been in the city for 30 years. I've built my business in the city. My son has grown up in the city. He's gone to the schools in the city. I was in the public school system growing up in the Bronx. I mean, I'm a born and bred New Yorker. And yeah, thank you for adding that commentary. Mr. Yang, who was born and raised in upstate New York, has lived in New York City for the 24 years. Yeah, so that's not nice, Barbara. I mean, a lot of people ran for president unsuccessfully. We had Joe Biden, the vice president, get the nomination, and Andrew Yang, having not previously held any elected office, finished 5th in fundraising and 7th in the election. So that's pretty good. And I digress and say that he has no political experience. He does have political experience, being Barack Obama's global ambassador of entrepreneurship, as well as now serving on Joe Biden's transition team for small businesses. Andrew Yang does have some political experience. And the whole reason is he has a child with autism and he has a second home. So rather than staying in New York City, where you're now having all these people indoors at home, having to manage the childcare instead of being at a separate area for work, Andrew Yang's now in the same location, and he is now working as a CNN commentator, as well as doing campaign work for the Joe Biden campaign. It makes a lot of sense to try and move out of New York City when I don't know if any of you have lived in a New York City apartment. Maybe some of you, the people here who are going to be the voters, have. But you got a lot of noise going through those walls, too. It's a difficult affair beyond just the having to manage the kids, too. So I know tons and tons of New Yorkers had to stay through that situation, and they deserve support. They did not get. But guess what? People who had the opportunity and did it to help their kids and to help our country on a federal level, I have no qualms with that. And when you look at the polling, 80% of people don't either. So this is a non-issue and a bit cheap. So let's hear, why does she run? You know, she built all this business and she's a real housewife. So why is she running? Because she's not a failed presidential candidate. So my question is to you, why shouldn't I run? New York City's a mess and we need to save it. And the city needs someone who really understands it and not what the politicians think the city is. I'm someone who grew up in the Bronx in a middle-class family. I want the same opportunities that I had for other people. I want women to be able to move up the economic ladder. I want to be able to revitalize our neighborhoods. Most importantly, I want streets that are safe and clean. I want to be able to go on to the subway and not worry if I'm going to get thrown into the tracks. I've watched the city decline, and COVID has really pushed me over the edge. And it's not because I'm enraged that people are getting COVID, which I am, but it's the fact that the government in New York City hasn't taken care of our people and the businesses that are here. It's chaos. It's crisis. Our city streets are overrun with trash and homeless people who deserve better than to be on our streets. We are in financial trouble, and the city is not managed properly. And you throw all of that together, and you have a government that's built on excuses by politicians. That's actually a pretty good answer, I'll admit. I'll say it's a little focused on just issues and not necessarily the solutions to them, but I agree with you on those issues. A lot of those are true. There's a lot of empty office space right now in New York City. What do you see as the future of those spaces? People realize that they can work from home and that they didn't have to spend 100% of their time at the office to be efficient. So I think people are going to realize that there are other ways to do business. But I think there's still going to be a shift in who takes that office space. 25%. Yeah, I mean, like, that's a non-answer. Because of COVID. Yeah, I mean, COVID is the main reason why people are not taking the subway systems currently, as well as the crime fears. Another candidate has suggested cutting the NYPD budget. What are your thoughts? She says, I don't think we should cut the budget of the NYPD. I don't believe that we should have less police on the street. Yeah, so she doesn't want to cut the budget. She would say Bloomberg has been the best mayor in New York City. Oh, and then she compliments Julianne. So she's kind of more of a right-wing Democrat, Real Housewives individual who, again, and I didn't even say this before, but like when you keep on saying he's like this implication of not a real New Yorker, there's like a xenophobic tone to that a lot of the times. Like it's really a means testing of, not a means testing. That's an inappropriate use of words. There's a lot of like litmus testing of people of like, have you really been born here? Are you from the area? It's like, how many years do you have to be somewhere to be from the area? Like, am I a New Yorker if I've been here 23 years, but I didn't live here for 3 years? I think I'm a New Yorker. I'd say Andrew Yang, having lived in New York City from 1996, also a New Yorker. So I digress. That is Barbara Kravoit. We got ourselves a Real Housewives running for the New York City mayor's race. So now we go on to our next one. And, you know, I want to take a brief pause, check on all the people who might be watching, see if there's been any comments along the way. Let's see. Yeah, no questions so far, but I will say, actually, one question here. The question is like, hey, do I ever intend to run for office myself? My answer to that is I'm not going to think about that until I start my own family, start my own life. Once I'm at that point and I've planted my own roots into a community and I'm working and understanding the issues there, maybe I'll get involved. Maybe my effort is better in advocacy. But let me keep going on. Any other questions here? No. Let's go now back to our candidate. So our next one here, Paperboi. Paperboi is a cool guy. I had previously heard about him when he was running for Congress. He is all about love and having fun. And he has a bold platform. I will say this. Great guy, entertaining guy, good values. Plan is just unrealistic in certain areas, just fiscally. But he's a wonderful dude. Like, let me just show you some of the issues. And like as you can see, he has like a lot of different ways he wants to engage you, like chat rooms, photos, albums, like videos. Like he really wants to engage you in a more youth-centered one. And you could tell even from the color scheme that he is definitely targeted at younger people like myself. But I am going to be backing Andrew Yang myself. Unfortunately, his policy page broke down. I know some of the things that he supports is he wants to make sure that everyone has health care, everyone gets $2,000 a month, that he wants to make sure that we have like rap classes in our classrooms. A lot of fun stuff. Good guy, worth following because you will enjoy getting to follow him. But I think his plan is not fiscally sound. Or at least he has not presented the evidence of it being fiscally sound because he does not go into as much the payment side of things, which I'm not as big of a stickler on when it comes to federal politics because we have the capacity to fund things through deficit. But on a local level, it's much more limited. So those things matter. And that's why even Andrew Yang himself, he's not running on a universal basic income in New York City. He's running on a guaranteed minimum income that is technically means tested for the most impoverished. I don't love means testing. I fully admit that. But local administration of programs is a bit more cost sensitive. Federal politics, we have a lot more leeway to embrace universalism. Let's go to our next one. Stacy Pressman. About Stacy. Let's see, Stacy, you got the apple rocking. Let's see what your platform. So let's see. Stacy Pressman is a national touring headline, stand-up comic, a radio host, actress, and public speaker. So she's probably a charismatic individual. Probably will be good at the stump speech. She's a proud lifelong native of South Brooklyn. Started serving her community at 16 in the League of Women Voters. Okay, that's how she got involved. She later worked at Headcount. So she's been involved in a lot of democracy efforts. Stacy's compassion drove her to animal rights activism. Okay. She overcame an eating disorder and gave keynote speeches on it. Okay. She's teaching people how to communicate. And she's running because coronavirus. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what your issues are. What's your platform, Stacy? Okay, well, that's a short summary. Okay, so as mayor of New York City, Stacy will do the following. Revive New York City's culture by establishing science-based coronavirus mitigation guidelines instead of haphazard regulations crushing our city. She has a more detailed plan for that. Okay. Democratize education by ending the mayoral control of the Department of Education and allowing local elections of education boards. That's interesting. I'd have to think on that more, but I think in general, that's probably a good plan. Yeah, I'd say it's a good plan. There would have to be some working together when it comes to like these more premier like schools that they have testing to get into that aren't in every single borough all the time. But I think there's definitely merit to considering decentralizing education in New York City. Protect potentially vulnerable communities and promote public safety by instituting comprehensive police reform. Give me some details. That can mean so many different things. Like there are some things that are proven effective and we need to be doing, and other things that are symbolic. Save CUNY by restoring its budget through elimination of the tax loopholes and democratizing its board of trustees. That's a good one. Successfully end the horse-drawn carriage industry in Manhattan. Did not think of that as a main priority, but I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird. I will agree. And it does seem a bit cruel to the horses. Yeah, I can see it. I don't see it as like a high priority, but it's probably the right idea to do. Okay. Establish New York City as a no-kill animal shelter zone. Yeah. I'm not sure if that means they'll have to manage like exporting it or managing populations or expanding kennels or what have you to manage not having any kills of animals. But yeah, we shouldn't be killing animals if we can't avoid it. a lot of these things I'm basically going to have to push her on saying like, give me the details. Because I'm a stickler for that type of stuff. Eliminate red light and speeding cameras. Yes, I like that one. I hate when you just barely cross over a line and you automatically get fined. It's going to hurt a lot of working class people because the way we do fines for our parking tickets are punitive more to the poor than they are to the rich because they're flat fees. And so this way of not having any discretion over the offense, I think, is going to lead to more harm than good. I get it. We're not always going to have the ability to have officers everywhere to enforce these things. But I think the downsides of these speeding cameras are larger than their upsides. Okay. She also wants to legalize vape, cannabis, and psychedelic sales. Dope. And she wants to decriminalize sex work. Also pretty dope. So Stacy's pretty interesting. Another person who I think, doesn't deserve to be like completely dismissed. I like some of the stuff she has. Obviously, more details would be beneficial. She has an interesting character. Yeah, so we look forward to seeing that. We hope some people will consider her as a 2nd through 5th choice. Next one, Stephen Bishop, and we're close to our end here. Stephen, your page, its color scheme. I'm colorblind, and I know this is just not right. Let's look at the substance, though. Now that I'm moving past design. So you want to be inclusive. You want to raise the bar. You want, what's that say? That's such tiny text. Change. His philosophy is simple. Do better. Everyone deserves equal, responsible, judgment. I mean, it's all pretty empty. Like, they're value statements. They're nice. There's nothing wrong with it. Just doesn't say anything. New York City 2.0. Reunify, reinvent, reboot, revive, reinvent, reopen, remove, reemploy, result, rejoice. Someone really liked the re-theme. Oh my God. Sure, yeah, that would be all nice, but let's see. This is just kind of a fun page to look at. This is where we start. Does that go anywhere? Okay, so these are just nice little things to click on. Maybe they'll do it eventually, but do these things? Nope. Okay, so there's not a lot of detail here, Stephen. Colorful page. Oh, and you got more policies down here and testimonials? What is this? Wait, let's go back. So, okay, so again, not saying anything. Like, this is an actor that I feel like, again, is just trying to get his name out there. It's at least a colorful page. Thank you for the entertainment, Stephen. I hope I can see more details and that you consider some color changes on the page. Yeah, that's all there. Let's go to our next one. So this one is I should barely even mention this. So I had to go to a Twitter page to get this. And what I found was this is all this person has. They're still listed as a candidate for 2021, but they have not made any posts. They do not have a website. This is everything you get. And I will just say it's an interesting picture, and I will completely oppose someone like this who would run on an idea of being a theocrat. Hell to the no. This is a secular zone. Okay, next one. We're going with our last 2 candidates here for today. Jocelyn Taylor. Jocelyn Taylor. So why is she running? Let's see. She's running because it's time to change the status quo. Yeah. They all say, let's see. It's time to talk about how we can. We pay taxes to make our lives better, not harder. The American dream's alive. How can our police make critical split decisions working 12 to 14-hour days? How can this caving in around them? It's basically like, how can our public workers actually do their job if they're not like actually being helped properly? I need to invest. Okay. She's running to protect the forgotten, fair minimum wage, small business owners. Okay, let's look at the solutions. She sounds like she has the right intentions of why she's running. Let's now hear the answers. Okay, so affordable housing. Oh, she actually has details. Good for you, Jocelyn Taylor. This will be fun. So let's see. Our city and politicians have failed. We pay taxes, can't afford affordability. Okay. More of the problem. Okay, here are the solutions. Halt evictions. Okay. Reinvest in NYCHA. Cool. Expand affordable housing and make housing truly affordable for those who need it most. Include affordable commercial space for small businesses. Okay. Provide stable housing for all homeless New Yorkers and include a variety of resources within the facilities. Converting empty office building. Not bad. Could be more, but that's not bad actually in terms of housing policy. Let's go. What else does she have? So all the sections she has. So she wants to legalize cannabis. That's cool. And she wants to do it in an equitable manner. Very cool. Smart city. So she has stuff on climate change and probably technology, homelessness, and mental health. Doesn't have as much fleshed out there. Healthcare, education, criminal justice reform, police reform, small business. I mean, she has the right priorities here. Let me, there's a couple more I want to check out. I want to check out with her the smart city, and I also want to check out with her the police reform and the small business. So let's check out those 3 pages, and we'll wrap up on her before we go to our final one, who is Isaac Wright. Okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is kind of similar to what Yang has. Let me read these last 2. These might be different. Make the CCRB an elected body that has the power to discipline police misconduct. Cool. Police unions and other. Okay, very cool. Good policy on police reform. Small businesses next. Okay, so she wants to provide funding for small businesses affected during COVID, provide opportunities to minority, women-owned businesses, worker cooperatives, and firms to work directly with cities, develop a graduated deposit program, city's payment for taking on it. Not gonna lie, Jocelyn, serious solutions here. I'm impressed so far. Let's read the last section here. Smart City, a sustainable New York City. Okay, so she has a section for climate change and technology and transportation. So I was wrong. It wasn't a technology section. But climate change, implement the Climate Mobilization Act, support the Renewable Rikers Act. Both of those are good bills. Update our energy infrastructure to rapidly transition, climate coastal resiliency, traction equity. Very cool. Work closely with the state to develop the plan to electrified buses, fully fund the MTA and expand accessibility of that. So I'd be curious how she feels on this point of like fully owning the MTA publicly eventually. But I like what she's got going on. So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna consider her for my top 5 right now. I don't know where I'll place her, if she'll make it, because there are some other good candidates too. But I'm impressed, Jocelyn. I'm impressed. Everyone, consider her for your 2 to 5 slots, everyone. Last one, Isaac Wright Jr. Isaac Wright Jr. is an American lawyer, and he was formally convicted in 1991 after a 5-week trial by a 12-person jury of 10 charges involving the sale of cocaine and was sentenced to life in prison. But his conviction was overturned in 1997 after litigation brought by him and his lawyer on the basis that the police concealed evidence of an illegal search and seizure of drugs presented as trial, and the prosecutor knew of a favorable plea agreement with one of his co-defendants who was a witness at his trial. This is, it became the legal drama that ABC produced called For Life. And yeah, since then, he also became a lawyer himself. Yeah, so I mean, let's see. Oh, it actually mentions here his top priorities. So he says his top priorities would be criminal justice. That makes a lot of sense. But that he would also focus on taxes, school desegregation, homelessness, and transit issues. Yeah, so 50 Cent likes the dude too. I need to see more details, but he's an interesting story. I'm going to give him that. I want to know more about what the tax is and the transit, but when we went looking for campaign pages or anything when we were trying to put this video together, we struggled to find anything for him. So, Isaac, highly encourage you, put out some more details, and we would like for everyone to be able to check out more that you have in mind. That being said, my friends, we've covered all of our minor candidates today. It's been over an hour. We've gone through the gauntlet. I hope you all enjoyed getting to see some of these lesser heard names in the New York City race. Tomorrow, we're going to be breaking down Andrew Yang's platform, detail by detail, and really fleshing out, because he spoils us. He gives us so many details, so I'm going to get to go into all of that. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to remind you all, you can check out all of our content at thehillofroses.com. We're going to be having our new website for the People's Basics in March, and there's going to be a lot of great content to come. If you're watching this on Facebook or on Twitter, please like this. Please make sure you go retweet it out so more people can go see it. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so you can stay alerted whenever our videos are coming out. Hit the like button to help us with the algorithms as well. Also, feel free, let me know in the comment section down below if you have any thoughts on the actual New York City race and other things you want to cover. And I'm going to do a last read through of any of the comments here before we wrap up to make sure that we're all covered, because I want to make sure everyone's having a great day out there. And I'm glad we got to do another recap. But before we go, let me just make sure I've read all the questions here. Let's see. I haven't seen any of these questions that our chat was referencing that were dropped, but I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. We do hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you all next time. Stay basic, my friends.